Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a classic economic mystery, contraction versus decrease in demand. Imagine you're running a business, or maybe you're analyzing a major market trend, and suddenly, sales just plummet. The numbers are totally down, and you urgently need to figure out why. Are consumers simply strapped for cash, or did a recent price hike scare them all away? Well, today we're going to decode the shrinking demand mystery by looking at two very different culprits, a contraction in demand versus a decrease in demand. Okay, let's dive right into this core question. I want you to put on your economic detective hat for a second. If fewer people are buying a product, is it because the price went up, or is it simply because they just don't want it anymore? Now, I know it sounds like a really simple, almost obvious distinction, but in economics, mixing these two concepts up can actually lead to disastrous business decisions and totally flawed market analysis. We've got to learn how to diagnose this sudden drop in customer demand accurately. So, to solve our mystery, we first need to establish the ground rules, specifically the law of demand. Think of this fundamental inverse relationship like a giant seesaw. As a product's price rises, that heavy weight on the left side, the quantity demanded naturally falls, sending the basket on the right up in the air. This rule assumes, and this is absolutely crucial, that all other factors in the world remain entirely constant. It's the absolute baseline of consumer behavior.
Right, let's move to our first suspect in the case of these shrinking sales. We'll call this scenario 1 the price seesaw, or if we're using formal economic terms, a contraction in demand. I want you to visualize a contraction as a simple movement along a rigid, unchanging structure. The track itself hasn't moved a single inch. It's just the passenger sliding to a different, higher spot on that exact same track.
Notice how a contraction is purely a movement up along the exact same demand curve. Just imagine moving from a starting point, let's call it point A, straight up the slope to point A1. And here's the absolute golden rule for this scenario. This upward movement is caused only by a rise in the commodity's own price. Literally, nothing else has changed in the consumer's world except for that price tag. Let's be super clear on the cause and effect here. When that price tag goes up, the quantity demanded contracts. It's like hitting a brick wall. The consumer's underlying desire, it hasn't changed at all. They still like the product just as much as they did yesterday. But that higher price tag is simply restricting how much they can afford, or maybe just how much they're willing to buy. It's a price barrier, not a loss of interest. Okay, let's bring in our second suspect and see how it triggers a completely different scenario, the demand earthquake. In economics, this is formally known as a decrease in demand. Now, if a contraction is just sliding along a rigid track, a decrease is like a seismic event. It actually shifts the entire landscape right beneath our feet, altering the market entirely, regardless of what the price tag says.
And this is a brilliantly clear illustration of a true change in demand. Notice how the entire curve physically shifts to the left, moving completely from the original outer curve to a totally new inner position. This happens because of external factors that are completely independent of the product's current price. Even if the price stayed exactly the same, people are suddenly just buying less of it. The very foundation of the market's desire has shifted away.
So what's the real crucial difference here? Well, think of it like a road. With a contraction, you're just driving further up the exact same road. The pavement hasn't changed. But with a decrease, you are practically picking up the entire road and moving it to a new location. It's a completely new, reduced state of demand. Which naturally begs the question, right? What actually causes this massive leftward shift? If it's not the price tag doing the damage, what is triggering this economic earthquake? Well, the answers lie in what economists call non-price determinants. These are the powerful external forces that can turn a consumer's wish into an economic reality, or make that demand vanish entirely. We're talking about major shifts in consumer income, changes in the prices of related goods, and even just evolving consumer tastes. To visualize this effectively, try thinking of these core economic factors as heavy-duty levers. The price tag is your simple lever for just moving up the curve. But your wallet, representing income, and the shopping carts full of other items, representing related goods, those are your heavy-duty external levers. When these get pulled or pushed, they cause a total decrease, literally, physically moving our entire demand curve to a new, lower location. Let's explore exactly how that income lever works. For most normal goods we buy, say new clothes or a flat-screen TV, there's a direct link to our wallets. If a consumer suffers a fall in their disposable income, they quite simply have less money to spend. This drop in purchasing power directly forces the entire demand curve for those normal goods to shift left.
That is a fundamental textbook decrease in demand.
Okay, now let's look at the other major trigger, related goods. This is known as the cross-price effect. Take complementary goods, which are things used together, like cars and petrol. If the price of petrol skyrockets, running a car becomes much more expensive, right? Consequently, the demand for cars takes a huge hit, a complete leftward shift, an absolute decrease. Conversely, think about substitute goods like tea and coffee. If the price of coffee suddenly drops, making it a way cheaper alternative, consumers are going to flock to coffee. And what happens to tea? Its entire demand curve shifts left, a pure decrease, without the price of tea ever changing.
All right, detectives, we've gathered all our clues from the source material. We've seen the predictable seesaw of price and the structural earthquake of external factors. So it's time to bring this investigation to a close and put these two concepts head to head for our final verdict. Let's compare them side by side one last time to cement the ultimate takeaway. For the concept of contraction, the cause is singular, an increase in the commodity's own price. The visual effect? A simple upward movement along the exact same demand curve, from point A straight to A1. But for a decrease in demand, the cause is an external change, like a sudden loss of consumer income or shift in the price of related goods. And the visual effect is drastic, a complete leftward shift of the entire demand curve to a new position, D1, D1. So here's what I want to leave you with. The next time you see headlines about sales dropping for a major brand, or if you're ever analyzing a business's overall health, I want you to ask yourself this one crucial question. Did they just raise the price, causing a temporary contraction along the curve? Or did the world change around them, causing a fundamental decrease that shifted the entire landscape? Master this distinction for sure, and you'll really understand the hidden forces driving the markets all around you. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep asking the right questions.